To start us off on our Brexit Hour this week, I'm going to be asking the question that, seeing that the government is in such a mess, and we'll go over what happened last week, but it seems that the cabinet is not united in what to do over Brexit. This is after 2 years of discussing this. We know that there's no majority in Parliament for anything, really. We have majorities of what people don't want. So there's a majority of people who are against the people's votes. There's a majority of people who are against a no-deal Brexit. We have a majority of people who are against May's Brexit deal. But we don't have a majority for something. We don't have a majority of, yes, this is a good idea, let's go for this plan. So if there's no majority in Parliament, there's no majority in the cabinet, surely, we have to come back to the people. And I'm asking the question, if it does come back to the people, as I think it should, what form should it take? Would you rather have another referendum, a people's vote, or do you think a general election is the way to go? And I have to tell you, I'm undecided. I don't quite know which would be the best for this country. But what I do know is that I cannot see this being sorted out by the politicians, especially the ones in charge at the moment. Well, I've got to say one thing, though. I have to say, I know we're going to be talking about Brexit for this hour, but I don't know. My heart actually did go out to Theresa May. Not as a politician. I've disagreed with pretty much everything she has done so far, but her resilience, dear me, where does she get the energy? I would have given up by now. I would have gone, do you know what? I've done everything I could here. Someone else can have a go. But her resilience, after 3 hours stood up on her feet in Parliament, then the cabinet meetings, then going on to give the live, her statement, where everybody, after the first few phrases, I thought, oh my God, she's going to quit. But no, she didn't. She was there to sell her deal, then going on the radio. Tomorrow she's going to be live on Sky News, I believe. Where does she get the energy and the resilience? I mean, I just would not be able to stand the pressure of having to repeat myself over and over again when you're coming under such scrutiny. Now, before we get started and sort of getting deep into our subject, Peter has called from Wimbledon. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Good afternoon. Love your show, Alexis. And I think you're one of the few voices of reason on the radio and TV. And what I would like to say is partially one of the reasons we are in such a mess 2 years down the line from Brexit votes is that people in the media have completely kind of allowed liars and conmen to get away with it. You know, they have been not offering no alternative to Theresa May plan or any other plans. And no one never been scrutinized properly about every single detail of the deal. And we can go forever about Irish border, which never was discussed before the referendum. I never heard it mentioned once. Mm-hmm. Because we as a country voted with a small majority to leave the union of countries, which removes borders between the countries, remove barriers. And by definition, we have to have a border with them. And now for the Brexiteers to say somehow we can do without having a border with them when they convince people to vote to have a border with them. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, it's extraordinary that one of the mantras has been, let's take control of our money, our laws and our borders. Oh, but apart from 350 miles of border over there, to which we suggest we should leave it completely open.
Absolutely. The people have to grasp the fact is the membership of the custom unions require checks on borders. That is just a fact of life. You can't make Northern Ireland a smuggling capital or the country of the Western world. You know, you have to have them checks in place. And unfortunately, I don't feel sympathy for Theresa May like yourself.
I'm feeling sympathy for the pressure she's under, not for her political decisions, let me clarify. But as a person, to be grilled days on end and her resilience, I do sympathise with her to a certain extent. But yes, go on.
Yeah, me too. And I think what she has done, which she said from day one, she's going to deliver the best possible deal. And that is exactly what's on the table, the best possible deal. You know, those people deluded and naive who believed somehow that European Union is going to allow UK to cherry-pick parts of the deal which are the best for the United Kingdom and just don't comply with all the other ones, They're just deeply deluded and naive. And in my opinion, people voted Brexit for a variety of different reasons. Some of them have their own grievances in life where they were looking for the reasons why life hasn't worked out for them. And suddenly people came along and said, look, it's all EU fault. And they find a scapegoat. And unfortunately, those people fell for it, hoping they're going to be better off. But we those sensible people, we know quite well there is no deal in this world which can be better than we already have with the European Union. They're our biggest trading partner, and we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot to please a few conmen and liars. And I'll say again, media should have been more strict with those people, because for the fear of being impartial, they were allowed just to come on the TV, on the radio, and just waffle along with a nonsense like, we don't have to have a border, we have cameras on a lamppost. Oh, for God's sake, how can someone think that a camera on a lamppost can solve customs union membership or checks on border?
Well, I agree with you, Peter. If I was going to try and make a case from my side of the profession, for the journalist side, but I don't think there is a case to be made. I mean, even now, when people are stood up, Jacob Rees-Mogg was allowed to stand in front of a huge gathering of reporters when he seemed to love and cherish the opportunity of being there. This was after he announced he put his letter into the 1922 committee. But again, he spurned out the same old rubbish of we trade with WTO and we're going to be fine, and plenty of countries trade on WTO alone. That is just not true. Only one country traded on WTO, that was Mauritania, and they are also now in talks with the EU to get some sort of trade deal. Bearing in mind that Mauritania's GDP is 5 billion, ours is 2.6 trillion. That's comparing apples with oranges. But he is allowed to spread those sort of one-liners unchallenged. And I totally agree with you, Peter. I think my side of the profession, journalists, have not been stringent enough to try and keep politicians down to facts. Not opinions, but facts. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg may think that we'll be okay on WTO. That's a perfectly acceptable thing to say. But when he says things like the majority of the world trades just on WTO, that's just simply factually incorrect. And I don't understand, and I'm with you, why we haven't clamped down on these factual inaccuracies, which sort of spread bad information. But Peter, let me ask you the question I'm asking to everybody this morning. It seems the Cabinet cannot agree on what to do. It seems that there is no majority for anything in Parliament. What do you think should happen next?
Take into account we haven't got a real opposition. In the form of a Labour, who are in a bit of a mess, and they are disjointed as well. Yeah. The issue of such a great importance and complexity as Brexit it is, has proven to be over 2.5 years. We're still kind of nowhere near having clear vision what was going to happen. I think only the people's vote, the more informed public, can make now more clear decision. They can see clearly what it brings, the Brexit, what does it entail. Because those people who say, well, we're going to have another referendum, imagine the Remain sign wins by, say, 2 or 3%, what we're going to do next, we're going to have a third one. No, it's like in life. When you make a decision in life, the more informed decision always trumps the one which is less informed. If you go and buy a house and you made an offer for the house, and then suddenly you do a survey, and the survey comes back and there's a lot of problems with the house, you have a right to pull out. And Absolutely. The thing is that your last decision will trump the previous decision based on more facts become available to you. And those people who are objecting to this, we're going to have 2, 3, 4 referendums. No, we're not. The second referendum will be the final one, and that will be the referendum which will involve people on both sides. I mean, I would imagine they would be able to change their mind, and they should be given a chance. David Davis said himself, he said, if democracy cannot change its mind, it ceases to be a democracy. So let's just prove we are a democracy.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's a great quote from David Davis, which he has conveniently forgotten. And let's not forget, it wasn't just him. People like Jacob Rees-Mogg put forward the idea that we may be better off having 2 referendums, one to say in or out, and the second one on the deal. They all sort of have distanced themselves from those decisions, and it's important to remember that big referendums, something like the Good Friday Agreement, was put to the Irish people, but that deal was put to them, so they all were able to read the deal before voting for it. It was such a bovine question, in or out, without knowing the outcome. But Peter, do you think that a people's... So you're saying to me that a people's vote, you would prefer that to a general election?
Absolutely, because it will be more clear what we're actually voting for, because different parties have different views on Brexit. And Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition, he's not clear himself where he stands. Well, I think personally he is a Brexiteer deep down.
Yeah.
I don't think he changed his mind since, throughout his, the history tells what his views are. But publicly, he would say he would look in for the 6 points test, which is no one knows where it is.
They're keeping the Prime Minister when she stood up, and in fact many Brexiteers promised the exact same benefits, and I think they're trying to hold the government to that account. Listen, you make a very, very good point, and that's why I tend to go towards a people's vote rather than a general election, because when it comes to a general election, I agree with you. I don't think Labour are as clear as they think they are when it comes to what they would do for Brexit. I mean, what you're hearing now a lot from Emily Thornberry, Barry Gardiner, all those people, is that we're going to negotiate a deal that is a jobs first Brexit. Well, for starters, there is no such thing as a jobs first Brexit. And after that, they can't go and renegotiate a deal. The withdrawal agreement has been agreed. So I don't quite understand what their plan is. But Peter, do you worry that if we do go towards a people's vote, we might not get as clear-cut a result as we'd hope for either side?
Maybe not, but I think if we should remain loose, and I think remain should be definitely on the ballot paper, we should have leave on Theresa May terms. Should be three options, and the other one is leaving without a deal, and the other one to remain. We should always be given a chance to kind of reverse the decision we made where we were completely misinformed, because even myself, I voted Remain, but so many things I didn't know about the EU, which I do now, and it worries me a lot, that we will be dragged to jump off this cliff without safety net or parachute in place based on just lies and a con. And I think public deserves to have a second chance to be able to, on the most important and complex decision in our lifetime, which in my opinion should have never been brought to the referendum in the first place, but we are where we are. So we should be given a chance to be able to, because this is going to affect not only us, but our children and so on and so on. And it's absolutely crazy to just commit yourself to go and people asking for WTO terms. They've got no idea how badly it's going to be impacted on UK economy. It's absolutely crazy. The financial sector is going to lose EU trading passports. That's the biggest contributor to the Treasury, United Kingdom. And they are talking about the fishing industry, which is 0.2% of the GDP. It's absolutely bonkers. We're not going to retrain our lawyers and bankers and so on to become suddenly fishermen, because we're going to be outside of fishermen agreement, the European Union, and we'll be able to fish, It's madness, and I think we should be given a second chance to get our country back.
Peter, I thank you for your call and I thank you for your passion. That's Peter from Wimbledon. What do you think of what Peter said? 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. I mean, it is interesting. We are making a huge fuss over the fishing industry, and it is an important industry, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not as important as our financial services. I'll pick one. There was a fantastic thread. If you go on my Twitter feed, I think I retweeted it. It's a fantastic thread by Edwin Hayward on Twitter. He lists 50 little bits of information of what Brexit has cost so far. Just one of the things here, 250 billion euros worth of business from Barclays is being moved from London to Dublin. 250 billion. And that's happening because they are worried about losing their passporting rights by staying in London. Direct effect of Brexit. Plenty of your tweets coming in. Vic says neither general election or people's vote. Just get on with it. I hear your pain, Vic, but just get on with it. Doesn't really get us anywhere. We need to be able to know what we're getting on to. Garnheim says political warfare also involves the art of heartening friends and disheartening enemies, of gaining help for one's cause and causing the abandonment of the enemies, all with a little help from the media. Look, I think the media have been accountable for what's gone on, and they've certainly have let too many people spread opinion, opinion dressed as fact, really, without being questioned. It has been a big, big problem. Sean says the whole thing's a mess. 2017 Tory manifesto never touted no deal. Yeah, that's good point, Sean. Actually, that's true. But a few people are coming through. There's one here from Mark Morrison says, when the EU and May agreement is defeated, we will have a WTO Brexit. Then the minds will be focused on a new, more pragmatic exit deal. I think this is the only way forward. Mike says, just leave without a deal, as this deal on offer gives our country away to the EU without any recourse. I think he means to say it's not rocket science, is it? So I think the sort of the kickback has happened with nobody likes this Theresa May deal. Brexiteers are now happy with it because it kind of is Brexit in name only, and by the fact that we're staying in some sort of customs arrangement will make it very difficult, if not impossible, for us to sign our own trade deals. But that's the only way we can keep the Northern Ireland as part of the UK. And of course, Remainers don't like it because, well, they quite rightly say, well, what's the point of that? We're still in the same place where we were before, but with less rights. But most people's reaction to it has been, well, forget about it then. Let's leave without a deal. So let's get my guest on. It's Professor Steve Pearce, who joins me on the line. Welcome to the show.
Hi there, good afternoon.
Very good to speak to you, Professor. And you're a Professor of EU and Human Rights at the University of Essex. So I can imagine that you have looked at the WTO option. In fact, I know you'd have because I've been following you on Twitter. So to all these people who are tweeting me right now saying, I don't see what's the problem, let's just drop out, fall onto WTO. It's Jacob Rees-Mogg's favourite phrase. There's nothing to worry about. We'll be on WTO. Everything will be cheaper. What's the problem?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing with Mr. Rees-Mogg is that his own investment organisation has set up in Dublin, and it's sent out a prospectus to investors saying we have to do this because of the risk of a no-deal Brexit. So in terms of where he puts his money, you can see that he takes a different approach. And that is the problem with a no-deal Brexit, is that there would be, for parts of the British economy, some problems. So we can't be sure exactly how much, but definitely problems that we won't face if we go ahead on with some form of sort of phased, orderly withdrawal from the European Union, like something like the withdrawal agreement.
Now, we've talked about the withdrawal agreement a little bit on the show already, and we've seen that Brexiteers don't like it, Remainers don't like it. Do you think there's any chance, Professor, that it will pass Parliament?
At the moment, it doesn't look like it could pass Parliament. There are obviously a number of Conservatives who'd vote against it, and then the opposition will vote against it, except maybe one or two Liberal Democrats. So I can't see how you have the numbers there. Now, it may be there'll be some changes to it, or maybe they'll come back to it after other ideas have been discussed, like an election or a referendum had failed, if they do fail. And then people will think again, or it may be that some car company will leave or something like that, and then people will think that's a reason to vote again. It's several different things could happen, so I don't think anyone knows for sure what's going to happen.
No, and folly would be to try and predict what would happen in this day and age with politics the way it's going. But you've got to hand it to Theresa May. She's managed to sort of stay where she's at. There is still question as we speak. All the news channels are reporting of how many letters have been submitted to the 1922 committee. But the fact is that there hasn't been a leadership challenge yet. Is there any scope in your mind, because one of the moves that we're hearing is that there are 5 or 6 cabinet ministers who their plan is to force Theresa May back to renegotiate this withdrawal agreement with the EU. What's your viewpoint on that? Is there room for renegotiation of this withdrawal agreement, or is it done and dusted?
Well, I mean, legally, anything can be renegotiated if it's not in force yet. The politics of it are that EU is saying it's very, very reluctant to renegotiate, or impossible, or whatever. So from their point of view, would they, if they felt they were going to end up with a hard border in Ireland anyway, would they try and renegotiate to avoid that? And how much would they? how much would they be willing to do? I mean, there is part of it that actually hasn't been settled yet, which is the future relationship declaration. So that was only a partial draft. So that has to be added to. So in a way, we are still negotiating something there anyway. So we could still have impact on that. And I could imagine declarations and a few different fiddles with wording being added to clarify things or to make sure we have our own fisheries control after the end of 2020, for instance. You could make that a little bit clearer, I think, that it is. So things like that might satisfy some people, but I don't think they're going to renegotiate from scratch.
And do you think that those small tweaks would be enough to get it through Parliament?
Possibly. I mean, I think the Labour Party is determined to vote against the first time around. I mean, some of the things that concern the Labour Party could also be the subject of tweaks. So you could add some text that, there were certain parts of the Labour Party's programme that could still happen if it were elected. Now, it might seem odd for the Conservative Party to want to negotiate something like that, but if they thought that, if they're trying to pass it through a second time to at least convince the Labour Party to abstain and maybe, or some members to abstain, just enough to get it through, then that might be something you could think about trying, odd as it might sound. So that kind of thing is at least conceivable. Whether it works, I don't know.
Now, a lot of people, we've been hearing this last week, not just from the public, but from MPs saying this was a betrayal. Theresa May never believed in Brexit. This is why this deal is terrible and none of us can vote. My question to you is, seeing as I know you followed this very, very carefully, but ever since the government signed that December agreement and agreeing the basic principles to the backstop, was there any other potential outcome than this deal? I mean, because it seems to me that it was a foregone conclusion that we were going to end up at some point or another, maybe it had been sooner or later, but we would end up at exactly the point where we are now, where we don't really have that many options open to us. This, in effect, this is what Brexit looks like.
Well, yes. I mean, remember there were several phases to it. There's a transition period and then probably this kind of customs arrangement with some links to part of EU law after that. Now, I don't think we'd have ended up exactly the same place. I mean, the idea in December looked that it was more specific to Northern Ireland, but then we ended up with something which is partly more UK-wide. This customs arrangement with applying some parts of EU law is something the UK government asked for as an alternative rather than something that's more specific to Northern Ireland. So we went down that route, but of course that's annoying people for different reasons, and there's still partly a Northern Ireland specific part, which is annoying the people on the unionist side in Northern Ireland. So in a way, you've
something
sort of
to be annoyed about somewhere.
Yes, two different things that annoy people, and of course Labour doesn't like parts of it for other reasons. So it's difficult. They've managed to annoy even more people.
Now, I'm going to be talking about Labour's position on Brexit in just a moment with Chris Williamson, the Labour MP for Derby North. Do you see that Labour have got any chances of... They keep saying about renegotiation, the withdrawal agreement. As we've discussed already, the EU don't seem to be open to starting this whole chat again, but Labour keeps going back to their 6 tests. They keep saying the same exact benefits. Are Labour actually more guilty, in your view, of cakeism, of saying they're going to have their cake and eat it? In fact, it seems to me that they're asking for nigh on impossible things out of this Brexit deal.
Well, they're asking for things certainly that the EU would be very unwilling to give, but they haven't said much. So as they have, I think, this deliberate strategy of watching the Tories turn on each other and not getting involved while their enemies are making a mistake, as some of them have actually said. So I think it's harder to criticise simply because there's not so much there. But I think in general, yes, they also say it would be terribly easy to renegotiate this to get exactly what we like. And I think we know that it isn't that easy to negotiate things. I mean, not only with the EU, I think it's going to be difficult when we start negotiating with the US and India and so on. They have proved to be difficult negotiators, and Brazil, everyone has in the past, one way or another. So nothing is going to be that simple with any negotiator.
It's quite strange, actually. I don't know if you've been following the news today, but David Davis has been tweeting a lot. He seems to find himself in Washington, D.C. I don't know whether it's official business, because, of course, he's no longer the Brexit secretary, but he seems to be talking about trade over with the US. Does that strike you as a little bit odd?
It's a bit odd, but I think they do talk to not exactly opposition MP, I suppose he's a backbench MP now. They do talk to people who sort of show up and want to have a discussion if they're senior enough. I think he may be trying to oversell it as if it's some kind of official conversation. I think they're just being polite to him. But then I think they're also trying to put pressure on. Obviously, from the US point of view, they'd like to do a trade deal. I have their own interests. You know, it's not going to be some one-way deal which just allows Britain to sell more goods to America. There's a whole lot of things they're going to want to sell us, and there's going to be controversy about it, which I think Mr. Davis kind of glides over there. But once we got into that negotiation, I think there will be all sorts of controversy and disputes about it.
So finally, Professor, because I'm getting a lot of tweets and texts already about, I don't see what the problem is. Why don't we just drop out onto WTO and then sort everything? What are the problems in your view of following such an action?
Well, one problem is for British exporters. We'd be subject to tariffs goods we sell to the EU. There'd be non-tariff barriers like checks on our goods, which would slow the whole process down. There wouldn't be so many flights. The EU is already saying it would severely restrict the number of flights, not ban them, but have far fewer. There'd be very few permits for professional lorry drivers onto the continent, because then we leave the EU system for that, and that affects their livelihood. I'm not so sure about shortages of food and medicines, and I think we might have a way to resolve that, and there's no blockade or anything like that. But I think there are significant enough problems that it's something we ought to try and avoid.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much. Thank you for being part of the show. That is Professor Steve Pearce, Professor of EU and Human Rights at the University of Essex. Now, I believe that... we've got a call in a second. We've got to call him back and he'll be on the show. Thank you for your tweets. Paul Barker says, I don't see the point in Brexiteers voting in a people's vote, as I would have no confidence that another Leave win would be enacted. How can we, when the first wasn't, the people's vote is just to overturn the first? Will the question be Remain or Remain? Paul always tweets me in these shows. I hear your point, Paul, and I do understand a lot of people who say, look, I voted the first time. Why should I vote again if the first time doesn't count? How do I know that this time will count? But my answer to you, Paul, is that how can you say that having another vote is undemocratic? How can you say that just because your vote didn't go the way you wanted the first time is that means that democracy is broken, for example? We vote on general elections every 5 years. The manifestos that we vote for don't necessarily come true. Does that mean we should just give up on voting? I just don't see it that way. And I don't see how going back to the people with more information than you had the first time is in any way considered undemocratic. Surely you've got more information to make up your mind. And you know perfectly well that if Leave won a second referendum, then that's what would happen. I am definitely confident in that, because Remainers will have nowhere else to go. They won't say, well, people were misinformed. We will have an election with more information and get a more informed result. Surely both sides should be pro having another referendum. Callum has called from Cardiff. Welcome to the show, Callum. What do you want to say?
Hi, good afternoon, Alexis.
Good afternoon.
I spoke to you last week regarding I was starting to have some doubts in relation to the way the negotiations would go in, and I was wondering if 2 years ago we should have just gone for the Norway option rather than seeking to go to a WTO.
Well, the problem with the Norway option, though, isn't the problem still there with Northern Ireland, that we still will have to have some sort of border either in Northern Ireland or in the Irish Sea?
Yeah, I thought about it, but I don't really think the Irish option or the Irish problem is as big as it's made out to be. I think it's
well, Callum, you say that, and a lot of people who've contacted this show have said that, and a lot of Brexiteers say that it's been blown out of proportion. But then when people call from Ireland and from Northern Ireland, they say that it is a problem.
I know, but you can't. You got to be able to separate out certain people. Certain people have certain experience about it, and then certain people have a bias because they don't want the troubles to start again.
Well, hang on, that's a good thing, right? I mean, I wouldn't want the troubles to start again, and I'm not really. I don't even live in Ireland, but I wouldn't want them to start again. Why should we do anything that would jeopardise the troubles starting again?
I'm not saying it'd make the Troubles start again. I'm saying people have blinkers on when it comes to it if they live in Northern Ireland, because they can't actually perceive whether or not there would be any way around it, because they're petrified of the Troubles starting again.
And so do you not think that their fears should be taken into account and listened to?
Of course it should be taken into account. That's why we've had so much time debating it on every news station in the UK, and where there's been research groups set in to make proposals on how it could be, rectified.
And of course, let's remember, this is a legally binding agreement that we have. It's not just the fact that we are worried about the Troubles coming. The Good Friday is a legally binding agreement. We have to honour that. But so are you telling me that in your point of view, it's not that big of a deal, and you think that there is some sort of solution which, they're not coming up with because why?
I think they actually have come up with a solution. I think people...
And why is it not being implemented?
Implemented? Well,
not implemented, but taken into account.
Why haven't we got any type of deal that would satisfy anyone? It's obvious why it hasn't been implemented. That's because since the start of these negotiations, Theresa May and her cabinet have, in secret, behind the back of even the Brexit secretaries, been arranging an agreement that puts us in a worse position than what we possibly could.
But why, Callum? Why? Why? If Brexit is such a great thing, if it really is going to be fantastic for this country, why do you and other Brexiteers believe that there is some sort of conspiracy to get the worst deal possible for the... Why would the UK Prime Minister deliberately try and thwart the deal that we get to make this country worse off? Why would you believe that?
So in 2010, David Cameron promised a referendum on Europe.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. Nothing materialised. He said that he was bound by the Liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
In 2015, he had pressure from UKIP, so it became a national debate. Then when it went to a vote again, he thought he wasn't getting a majority. He thought he was bound by the Liberal Democrats again, and he wouldn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So what he did was, when they actually got elected on a tiny majority, just around about 51% of the seats, he was forced to implement it. So he tried to get it out of the way as quickly as possible without having to debate it in any way. As soon as the vote came around and it went the wrong way by a gnat's whisker, they were forced to implement it. So they put in somebody who could deliberately destroy the negotiations.
Okay, but you're repeating yourself, Callum. You've just given me a nice history lesson, which I am grateful for, and I'm not being sarcastic. But my question to you is, why? Why would Theresa May deliberately want to sabotage the Brexit deal?
The same way every other referendum in every country on any EU treaty or any part of the European law has been forced to vote again, like in the Netherlands and in France.
Do you also mean the same way the UK government forced Manchester to have a referendum on whether or not they wanted a mayor, and the referendum came back with Manchester saying no, they don't want a mayor, and guess what? They do have a mayor now. Do you mean like one of those referendums?
I'm not clued up on Manchester.
Well, but I can tell you that a referendum in this country was ignored by the government, and they said, yeah, you've had a referendum, tough, you're going to have a mayor. There you go. So it's all very well to cherry pick from the EU, and I'm not saying the EU is a perfect institution, but what you haven't explained to me is why, if Brexit is such a fantastic deal for this country and really would see us better off in control of our money, our laws and our borders and all that vacuous words that come out of Brexiteers' mouths, if it's so brilliant, why would Theresa May want to sabotage it? I still don't get it.
Because all the reasons people voted Brexit are the same reasons why we're in the EU. People say we don't want free movement of people. Well, free movement of people is a very good thing if you're rich and you want to own servants. But if you serve a party that basically has built the economy back on cheap migrant labour, why in the world, if you believe in neoliberal economics,
mm-hmm.
you believe in mass migration, you believe in that when big institutions fail, they should be bailed out rather than letting them recover and rebuild in a way that would actually be physically, financially stable, and you believe the best way around it is to go through this neoliberal economic policy where we're tied in, heavily regulated, so that small business is basically suppressed in line with big business. Why would you not try and sabotage getting out to the position where we can actually change anything about it?
So,
I mean, just to go over this, I haven't heard anyone talking about this, okay? Because people talk about the deal and how we get WTO terms and how we would debate a new trade deal and how long it would take.
sure.
Nobody's actually talking about how good our position is in relation to it and how much the EU actually needs us. So,
Are you going back to they need us more than we need them?
in trade terms, yeah. So Germany has a 55, as an export market to the UK, of 53 billion. Okay, it has a 41.5 billion deficit on the goods it sells us. Netherlands, 30 billion. Italy, 13 billion. Spain, 8 billion. France, 5 billion.
But Callum,
all of these are deficits. Wait. Are trade surpluses, so where we sell them more than they give us, the only EU country that appears in the top 10 is Ireland.
okay, but Callum, they're a much bigger market, right? So in future terms, they can attract better business than we are because they're a much, much bigger market than we are. And the whole idea that they need us more than we need them has frankly not materialized because look at the way we've been treated in the negotiations.
Because our politicians are spineless.
Okay.
We are this seller's market.
Okay, Callum, I've been forced to go to break. You think it's the politicians. I think it's the numbers, but thank you for your call. And I do appreciate our little chats. That's Callum from Cardiff. We're going to take a little break. I still want to hear from you. Do you prefer a general election or a people's vote? But next up, we're going to be looking at Labour. What's their policy on Brexit? Thanks for all your calls, texts and tweets. Simon on Twitter says, Alexis, I'm fed up with hearing people defending that woman's resilience and tenacity. This is me expressing some sympathy with, her resilience with Theresa May. She's the reason we're in this mess. She's a pain in the bum, and she's too stupid to realise that the public see her as a joke, like her party in general. Get May out. Thanks for your tweet, Simon. And by the capital letters at the end, I take it that you're quite upset. I see. I hear you. I was just saying I admire her stamina, her resilience. I would have cracked by now. Don from Aberdeenshire says, why would a bad deal suit Theresa May? This refers to my call earlier with Callum from Cardiff. Quite simply because it increases the chance that Brexit will be abandoned. The strapline would be, quote, we tried it. It was too difficult. Let's stick with the status quo. Oh, I see. Okay. So they tried it difficult. So it's a sort of an underhand to make Brexit fail. Can I just say to all those people that think that Theresa May's gone in deliberately to get us a bad deal so that we sort of abandon it in the long run, I think you're giving these politicians way too much credit. I think you're giving them way too much credit for being way too intelligent. Our poll, which is which one would you rather have, a general election or a people's vote? As it stands now, we've got 64% going for general election, 36% a people's vote. I'll get back to some more of your texts and tweets. But next up, I'm asking the question, what is Labour's position on Brexit? And to help me answer that, I've got Chris Williamson, Labour MP for Derby North. Welcome back to the show, Chris.
Hiya.
Of course, you guys must be having a ball on the other side of the house at the moment, watching across to see what's happening to the Tory party, who seems to be eating itself from within.
Well, they're certainly in a very difficult place. They seem to be falling apart, and I'm not sure how they're going to recover from this. But Theresa May has limpet-like qualities. I didn't think she could survive having called an early election, and when she'd got a majority in the House and then found herself actually losing that majority. Any other leader, I think, in previous times would have probably gone in those circumstances. And there's been various other dramas and crises that she seems to have ridden out. Whether she's going to be able to ride this one out remains to be seen. But I think the only way out of this impasse is a general election. Whether they replace the person at the top or not, I think is really irrelevant. In one sense, it's not in another, because I think any new Prime Minister would not have a mandate. And I think it would be unconscionable, and I think there are many Tories who feel this too, for a new Prime Minister to come in and not get that re-endorsement from the general public.
What do you mean election. if there's a leadership election and we get somebody like Gove taking over and then carrying on with Brexit? You
Yes,
think that they need to
absolutely.
go back to the people?
I do. I think, given the state of play at the moment and the complete mess that they've got themselves into with their inability to negotiate with the European Union, I think the only way through this now is a general election. I mean, and I think, under a Labour government, we would be negotiating in good faith. We'd be able to negotiate without constantly having to look over our shoulder and renegotiate
Chris,
with the party back in the UK. And then
okay, but Chris, you say you won't need to negotiate by looking over your shoulder, but it's not as if the Labour Party are united behind what Brexit means. And I'm slightly confused by some of the comments that I've heard from several of your Labour colleagues coming out saying, well, we'll go back to the table and negotiate certain tweaks to the withdrawal agreement. There is absolutely no appetite from the EU to renegotiate what they've seen is 17 months of painstaking work to get to this stage. And we're 4 months away. There's no time to do any of those things.
Well, I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. I mean, we've had back of the chair discussions with senior EU officials, and all they've said is, look, we just want to know what kind of relationship does the UK want to have with the European Union, and we're prepared to negotiate on that basis, whether it's a distant or a close relationship. And we, I think, would want to have a customs union that would then protect them, manufacturing. It would enable us to get over the difficulties in relation to the Irish border. And would, I think, give us a chance then to get access to tariff-free access to the single market. But what we would also be negotiating on the basis of not being fettered, as we would be with this arrangement, in relation to state aid rules. I mean, that cannot be. Look, this economy is in a mess, and we need the government to intervene. We need to give certainty, I think, in the economy. We need this big investment, I think, in relation to infrastructure. And if we were to do that, that would give confidence, I think, to businesses. There's huge resources, stacking up on the balance sheets of the private sector companies, and they've not been willing to invest because of the uncertainty, not just with Brexit, but prior to that, with the austerity and so on. So,
Chris,
I think a very different approach would be one that would.
Well, you say it's a very different approach, but I'm struggling. You say it's a very different approach, but I'm struggling to see how your deal, and the deal that you suggest, and the way that Jeremy Corbyn always puts it, which is a jobs-first Brexit, I'm struggling to see how it would be any different with the current course that Theresa May has put into action. She has got a customs arrangement, which is no different to the customs union, really, in very basic terms, which is what's driven Brexiteers insane, because, of course, that means that you won't be able to sign our own trade agreements with other countries. Free movement of people would stop. I think Labour are behind that as well. So where are the big differences between what you're proposing Brexit should look like and what Theresa May is bringing back from the EU?
Well, I think, for example, the customs arrangement that Theresa May has negotiated is a temporary one, and I don't think that would give the certainty that is needed. We would be looking to negotiate a bespoke UK-EU customs union, but we would also be negotiating it. I mean, as Jeremy has said, I mean, it's kind of shorthand, but, this notion of putting a sort of jobs first, if you like, in regards to our negotiations is really, really important when you actually look at that in more detail, because what we've seen at the moment is a situation where more and more people, millions of people in precarious jobs. We know that the kind of real wage is £800 per year lower than it was in 2010 at the moment. The wealth of the nation isn't being shared equally around the vast majority of the public. It's being accreted to the very wealthy individuals at the top of society and the faceless corporations. So we are looking at an arrangement that would have a permanent customs union and that would enable us to, intervene in the economy in a way which is difficult at the moment as members of the European Union, and would continue to be so with the agreement that she's signed up with this temporary arrangement that she's organised with the European Union now. And of course, there is no guarantees in relation to workers' rights, no guarantees in relation to the environmental protections and consumer rights, etc. Yes, it offers a floor, but any further improvements that might be made by the European Union wouldn't then be enjoyed by British citizens. And I think what we need to have, in my opinion, is a close relationship with the European Union, outside of the European Union, but working in tandem with the European Union on the biggest challenge, for example, facing humankind, and that is climate change. We saw the IPCC report last month, I think it was, wasn't it? So we've probably got about 10 or 12 years to sort ourselves out. We can't deal with that on our own. We need to work, I think, in tandem, not just with the European Union, but with others. So we need to work collaboratively, I think, with the European Union on that. We need this tariff-free access, if we can negotiate that with the European Union to the single market. But we also want the ability to, as I've said, be able to intervene in the economy, because the way the economy is structured at the moment, it's not serving the interests of the vast majority.
Chris, if you negotiate a customs union with the EU, it means that we will not be able to make our own trade deals, which, as far as I can understand, has been one of the big selling points of Brexit, along with stopping freedom of movement and other things along those lines. So what makes you think that the British people, especially the 17.5 million who voted for Brexit, are going to agree to Labour's idea of staying in the customs union when they're already up in arms in the withdrawal agreement of Theresa May, which is actually, as you said, a temporary solution? I mean, it seems to be a sort of a dream on type Brexit that's been put forward by Labour.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's fair. And I think it's all about...
Well, how are you going to get Brexiteers on your side if you're offering them a customs union, which means that the UK won't be able to do its own free trade deals? How are you going to get them on board?
That's a moot point as to whether or not we would
it's a big point.
Be able to... Well, no. Well, I think it's moot, though, because there's no certainty about that. I mean, that's an assertion. I mean, I think...
if you're part of the customs union, you cannot do free trade agreements with other countries. There's no ambiguity there.
At the moment,
that's fact.
No, I mean, it's a fact in relation to the current customs union.
So you're saying, like Theresa May saying, you're gonna create this sort of have your cake and eat it, some sort of customs union which you can be in, and at the same time create your own free trade agreements with other countries.
Well, I always think there's no point in having cake unless you can eat it. You don't want to just sort of look at it, do you? Really? But no, I think it's down to it'll be down to the negotiating acumen of the negotiators. But look, the biggest trading relationship that we have is with the European Union, isn't it? So let's just remember that. And it's all very well saying, we're going to negotiate these other trade deals. But our biggest trade deal, the biggest market in the world is the European Union. So I think the prize of getting tariff-free access to that European Union is one which is well worth fighting for, I think. And having the ability still to intervene in the economy is really, really key, I think, to make sure we get a jobs first Brexit.
Chris, I've got to leave it there because I've got to go to the news. Thank you very much. That's Chris Williamson. He's Labour MP for Derby North. I've got to say I'm none the wiser. I don't quite understand what Labour's solutions are, and I think that is one of the main reasons we are in this sticky wicket, because there is nowhere for people to fall behind an idea, an option, a solution to these problems. A very interesting tweet from someone who calls themselves RealDDHQ, hashtag stand up for Brexit. Alexis Conran, you are a character. Lol. French. Brexiteer and trade lobbyist, I cannot believe what you say. While Mogg should be held accountable to his statements, I strongly believe I should start with you. Shall I call in? Yes? Let me know. Well, if you're not a bot, or if you learn to spell, or if you learn some proper grammar, please do call in, whoever you are. Let's look at the profile. Oh, yes. Hashtag make America great again. Drain the swamp, starting with nasty Ramonas, refusing the result of the... Oh, for gosh sake. EU is a corrupt machine. Yeah, go on, knock yourself out. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Try your luck. Now, Harry's call from Portsmouth. Welcome to the show, Harry.
Hello, Alexis. The other day, I met a little dog, little wire-haired terrier, tan and white.
Okay.
I asked the owner its name, and he said Fudge.
I can see where this is going. Yep.
It's an omen, isn't it? I'm going to say, did you see those pictures from Downing Street the other night? In the dark, camera lights flashing away as though it was lightning. It was like the Rocky Leafy show, the Leafy horror show. It was absolute terrible look to it. in the dark.
Okay.
What a way to run a country.
Okay, but what? So I take it you're not happy with the withdrawal agreement that our Prime Minister has managed to negotiate with the EU?
No, everybody knows it's a Toblerone train of pants. So that's. I mean,
Okay.
The chance we got at the moment is the Tories oiker out. Yeah.
Okay.
Down
Harry,
to 5 trying to do something.
Harry, let me stop you there. So you're saying that what you want to see is a leadership contest. By the way, we know that 22 Conservative MPs have submitted letters. And also, as a little side note, I have to say, Jacob Rees-Mogg made a big song and dance about these letters. If 48 letters do not materialise, I think his political career is over. Because you do not try to unseat a Prime Minister and fail and survive. So,
okay, well, Plan B, that's probably Labour trying to get another government, or Plan C, the 2 years of propaganda that the Ref 2 people are doing will have worked. I mean, we had a short campaign of 10 weeks, yet they've kept up a 2-year campaign. So I think when it comes to the Electoral Commission, who aren't exactly straight as a die, I think they've already spent their budget, the Ref 2 people.
No, Harry. It doesn't go like that. Your campaign funds are your campaign. Listen, there's nothing stopping Brexiteers campaigning for how wonderful Brexit is, but all they've managed to do for 2 years is argue amongst each other of what Brexit means. But let me take you back to your original point. You want to see May out. So let's say there's a leadership contest come Tuesday, as they're speculating there might be. She loses a vote of no confidence. She's out. What happens next, Harry? Who should take over the mantle and the reins and run with it? Who's going to deliver the Brexit you want to see?
Well, there's the Gang of 5, so maybe they'll put themselves forward. We know this deal is absolute terrible. It's like a Y2K. We've got 20XX written in the title following December 2020. May hasn't got a deal going yet. There is no way there's going to be this so-called magic solution to the Irish border, because they don't want a solution to the Irish border. This is being driven by Varadkar. He got in 17, just as May blasted, we'll call that silly election of hers. And ever since then, it's been uproar. They've raised all these points, and yet before that, apparently the EU were quite sanguine about coming up with let's say a so-called camera solution. And yet, once Varadkar got in, the whole thing changed. So we're fighting Irish politics. Now let's get on to Irish politics. I told you the other week, when Blair and Major were fiddling about back in the 1990s, they knew what was going to happen. It's the same as 1973. We went into the EU exactly on the same day, and I always wondered at the time, why is this little country called Ireland, where there's been a little bit of trouble with the northern part of
I'm going to stop
Ireland.
you there, Harry. Hang on, Harry. 3,000 people getting murdered is not a little bit of problem. And I think you should show a little bit more understanding. Now, let's get off the Irish politics. I'm no expert in Irish politics, and I'm not going to pretend I am. Okay, well, let's move off it now. So, who do you think could do a better job than May is doing right now for your cause? Who's it going to be? Because I'll tell you what, Harry, all the people who stood up for Brexit before the referendum seem to be dropping like flies. Boris Johnson quit his job. David Davis quit his job. Dominic Raab quit his job. Esther McVeigh quit her job. So why are they all going away? Why are they not standing their ground and delivering this wonderful Brexit that we can all have? Where is it?
You know why? Because most of the Tory MPs and the Labour MPs never wanted this referendum. They're pro-Europe.
That's true.
They've been going down this road for the last 30 years or more. People quote Thatcher in the single market. She did that because she knew we were being cheated then. So she said a single market will stop non-tariff barrier cheating going on. But of course, when you look at their figures after all these years, you find out we've only got 1.5 million in Europe of our citizens, and most of those are blasted, retirees and long-term holiday makers. And the reverse direction, we've got 3 million to mop up unemployment in other countries. And then you look at the actual trade deficits, and it's 2-1 in their favour.
Can I just say that there's just over 2 million in the EU. We've got about 3 million EU migrants, and they all seem to be net contributors to the economy. But you still have not answered my question, Harry, and I'm going to press you for a name.
Right, keep going.
Who do you want to see take over from Theresa May? Who do you think is going to deliver on the promise of Brexit? Who is that person?
Going on the low calibre of MPs we've got, and we all know
I'm glad you and I agree on that.
We know it. Everybody knows it now. You can't take 2 years to wait. Just waste.
Go on. Give me a name. Give me a name. Give me a name.
I'm going to say off my head, one of the gang of five are practical. Leadsom should have been the leader.
Oh, come on, Harry. Leadsom, really? She's got all the dynamism of a sick cat.
No, she went down to that Grenfell Tower. You know how May delegates? She always delegates. Not when it comes to MI Brexit, where she had a secret government, like Blair did in his MI sofa government.
Okay, Harry, roll back. Hold back. So Leadsom would be your choice.
I'm saying I saw her go down to that Grenfell Tower when May was too scared to.
Okay, Sadiq Khan also went down to the Grenfell Tower. Let's put him in charge. That's no mark of putting someone in charge. The question is, who do you think can go forward and actually get a better deal? Bear in mind, it took 2 years with Brexiteers in charge. David Davis was in charge. Dominic Raab was in charge. And this is the best they've come back with. Don't you think, Harry?
They weren't in charge.
It said Minister for the Department of Exiting the EU on their title. So if were not in charge, who was in charge?
But they were presented with a secret document that they'd never seen back in July on that hot summer at Chequers.
Isn't it convenient to now say that all the people who were in charge, who couldn't actually negotiate a proper deal, now we've been told actually they weren't in charge? Come on, Harry. It sounds so amateurish.
Well, we know that's. I keep going back to my point. We know they're useless, these MPs. Look at the Labour mess. They started a war that they collapsed the economy back in 2008, didn't they? We know they're absolutely useless, and we're stuck with them. That's why we like the idea of a referendum. Of course, Cameron, who was visiting Hammond last week, filmed walking along the pavement, visiting the Treasury. Look, he's the man behind it, but he's just as useless. He just did it to knock out UKIP.
Okay, so what do you want to see, Harry? So let's say, Leadsom takes charge, Grayling takes charge.
They're all useless, I know.
Okay, but then they take charge, and then what happens? Do you think they're going to be able to negotiate a better deal with the EU?
Well, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? 3 letters, WTO.
Oh, come on, Harry. I've already spent an hour talking about WTO and how it's not going to help us.
I missed the first 15 minutes, sorry.
I answered it. Look, WTO doesn't help us. No country on the planet just trades on WTO. It doesn't help the Northern Ireland border. We're going to have to put a border there. No country in the world trades solely on WTO. It is not a solution. I
thought we bought stuff from America under WTO. There's no trade deal between the EU and America.
The US have got trade agreements with the EU that override WTO rules. So has Japan. So has
signed.
Sorry.
Yeah, Japan's just signed up, haven't they? That's what the EU is all about.
Yeah, China, Russia, Japan, India, and the US have non-tariff agreements over WTO. So we have special agreements with them. So no one actually trades on WTO. The head of WTO said it's not going to be possible for the UK to put those agreements with 164 members. There's people already saying that they will get in the way of the UK trying to negotiate certain deals and dropping their tariff barriers. It is not an option. Just because Rees-Mogg says it's an option and no one picks him up on it does not mean that it's true. So what are the other solutions?
Well, first of all, turning down a referendum vote by the British people, that's not an option either. Now, they can fuddle and
What do you mean? Sorry, what do you mean turning down a referendum vote? What do you mean?
The referendum result was leaked. That document that Cameron produced as far as I recall, it said leave the single market, leave customs union.
Didn't say the word customs union in it. Again, this is another one of those factual things. It did not say the word. It said if we vote to leave, we may limit our access to the single market. Those are the words that were in that document. Said nothing about leaving the single market. Said nothing about leaving the customs union. Go back and check it if you like.
I was actually quoting a BBC reporter just 2 days ago, arguing with someone. I think he's called Matthew Pennycock. Is he an MP? He's a man.
I've never heard of him.
And this woman got exasperated and said, "Single market we knew about, customs union we knew about." So I was picking up from this conversation I heard on the radio.
Okay, and that's fair enough. Look, there's a lot of information everywhere, but I can tell you categorically that document sent out by the government said if we vote to leave, it may limit our access to the single market. So the words customs union don't even appear on that document. But Harry, we can go around in circles on this. Let me ask you this. I totally appreciate yourself and everybody else that voted Brexit. And I hear your point, and I agree with your point that you were asked to vote, you gave a decision, and if we go back on that decision, that is undemocratic and is not correct. I agree with that. However, how is it undemocratic to ask people to vote again? How is that undemocratic? You're going back to the people and saying, look, now that you know more about the situation and more about the what Brexit is actually going to look like, that you have more, make an informed decision. We go back to the people, you guys decide. How, Harry, is that undemocratic?
It wouldn't be, but of course what I've learned and what others have learned isn't just to the convenience of a let's go and stay in brigade.
No. Listen, I'm not saying that if we had another referendum, it's quids in, everybody would vote to remain. It may very well possibly be exactly the same result, 52-48 to leave. But at least, Harry, the 52 who have voted to leave know what they're voting for. They know that it means the withdrawal agreement that Theresa May has brought back or whatever agreement we decide on. They don't have this sort of vague notion that leave means, well, some people like Daniel Hannan said, well, we'll just do the Norway option. Nigel Farage said, look at Norway, they're doing all right. That's what people took to say leave.
Farage was misquoted, I think, there. I know I didn't believe Daniel Hannan. I didn't like it 2 days before the referendum when I heard Daniel Hannan say, single market's okay. But Farage didn't actually mean what we thought he meant. He mentioned Norway, but he didn't actually mean a Norway agreement.
But you had people like Boris Johnson saying back, no one's ever talking about leaving the single market. You had so many people saying this is going to be the easiest deal in history. Look, let's not rehash the referendum.
No.
But what I don't understand is why you, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but why you would be against a people's vote.
I'm not against the people's vote if it's forced on us, but of course the circumstances would be suspect. The actual people forcing it on us are very suspect people themselves now, because the second that referendum result came in, there was a torrent for a solid year of abuse over the airwaves on people who were too stupid.
No, okay, there was a bit of that, but also
I heard a hell of a lot of it.
Yeah, but you know what I've heard a lot of? I've been called a Ramona, I've been called a whinger, I've been called unpatriotic, I've been called undemocratic because I question that this is the Brexit's a good idea. So I'm getting it on my side, Harry.
Yeah, that Remain bit came in about 2 or 3 months because people were getting fed up of being, criticised for being stupid. But we'll put that to one side. This Ref 2, if it's foisted on us, then yes, I think everybody who wants to leave should carry on voting because, the message may get through. And then you'll say, well, who's going to be in charge then? But of course, that's the situation we're in. May has had 2 years to sort this out. When she came back in September, and the first thing she said wasn't about this agreement. It was about the poisonings in Salisbury. Now, on your George Galloway show, he revealed only around that period of time that They knew about this hotel in East London 2 months later, and yet that building, from all the publicity that was never received, was never cordoned off. They're cordoning Salisbury off, and yet
we're veering on to subject matters where that's a whole can of worms. But look,
what she said was, we've been doing lots of arguing over the summer, and she meant the whole period. She knew what was going on in this country. She knew there was massive rows for 2 years, and the first thing she said casually was, "There's been some quite heated discussions over the last summer or so of this EU business."
Okay, Harry. Harry, I think we sometimes find common ground, you and I. But hey, look, what will be. I'm sure we will speak again. I think it's going to head to some sort of vote, whether it's a general election or whether it's going to be a people vote. But Harry, thank you for calling me. That's Harry from Portsmouth.